All right, the Build Show live from California. I literally just got off the ocean and came straight here. I dried off really, really quickly, but my new custom Builders FirstSource Build Show surfboard is pretty cool, I gotta say. We got a live audience for you today, guys. Of course, we're not live on the video, but we do have actual builders, remodelers, a couple of architects in the audience today. And we are at the LA store. This is actually Del Boca Mar Vista. What is it again, guys? Mar Vista, thank you. I always get that wrong. I think that's a Seinfeld reference from Del Boca Vista. And I've got three builders with me today. We're talking windows, doors, and decks. We're gonna get into some really nerdy details in this video, and we're gonna pick the brain of three really smart contractors to really give you guys some good information when we're thinking about windows, doors, and decks, especially in California, where you guys have a little different requirements than a lot of places in the country, including fire. I thought we were gonna get caught in a mudslide for a minute today because the rain came down like cats and dogs for like 35 seconds, and then it was beautiful and sunny again. This is a little bit different of a climate. So before we get going, let me introduce the three contractors we got. So first we got Mark with Jersey Boy Construction, Mark Vesta. Kobe Cohen with California Deck Builders, right? Did I say that correct, Kobe?
Yep.
Bill Vano with Precision Window and Door Install, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so with that being said, Mark, you are up first, actually. You're my first victim today. So Mark is a remodeling contractor doing work really not very far from where we are, right, Mark? This is kind of your home store, isn't it?
That's correct, yep.
And Mark, I know we were out, Matthew on my team was out visiting with you on a couple of your jobs recently. And speaking specifically about windows and doors, I think you as a remodeling contractor have a bit of a disadvantage over new construction builders, because sometimes new construction, I do both actually, but sometimes new construction you might have easily 6 months before you might need your windows and doors, or maybe even longer, if you're starting clearing a lot or taking down a house and building new. But remodeling, if you're putting a new window in, a new big slider where there wasn't one before, it might not be very long from demo to install time. And so Mark, I'd love to hear from you a couple tips and tricks that you've learned, and specifically what you're doing this day and age of longer lead times.
Sure, yeah, this is an example of our 11th Street project here in Santa Monica, and the objective here is to replace all 45 windows and doors. What you're seeing here is a destructive analysis of a certain window, and we did that because we haven't signed the contract yet. We have a designer in place, and the designer is calling out a specific type of window, and he wants to maximize the size of that rough opening. So what we needed to do is get a good look at it. I didn't want to take down too much. There is no ink on the contract yet, so I just said to the owner, we're going to do a little bit of analysis. And in this particular picture, we found really ugly framing from the 1920s. We're not so sure what we're seeing there, but we know that our rough opening may or may not be there, maybe. So I said to the customer, the prudent play here is to, well, let me back up and explain. We're here with windows and doors being a lead time of more than we've ever seen in our lifetime. And so the 3-week lead time is long gone. And so in this situation, they wanted to get a head start on ordering these windows, but the prudent play was to hit the pause button and wait until we actually do full demo. That way we understand what we're working with, framing-wise, framing members, structural engineer may need to get involved once again to overall maximize the amount of window space that this home will ultimately have. And we didn't want to roll the dice and say, hey, by this measurement we can, safe bet 58-inch RO for the width. We wanted to make sure we did a full-on demo before we ordered these windows. So yeah, that was the problem.
I assume this crowd realizes that we've seen some manufacturers that are 6 months, maybe even longer. And I've heard, black finishes or some of the other popular colors, sometimes even longer. Although I did hear today, I think, if you guys don't know Carlos from Builders FirstSource was telling me that some of that has actually rolled back, and they even have some options that are in stock, like Heritage from Anderson. I understand the local BFS LA market, there's several doors that are actually in stock in some more common sizes that you could get delivered literally 2 days later to your job site. So there are some options. But Mark, when you and I were talking earlier, you said that, and I thought this quote was awesome. Before the contract ink is dry, I want my clients to know exactly what we're doing so I can be at BFS in order. Will you talk about that a little bit or expound on that?
Yeah, for sure. So we want to make sure that they touch and feel and come to the showroom to make sure that they know what they're getting. And we want that to happen in the infancy stages right after the contract is signed. And so our objective is to make sure pre-construction we have enough of a conversation where they understand the price points of what they're looking for. And then we come to the showroom right around that time to make sure that that is ordered within, we hope, the first 3 weeks of beginning our construction, because that's a great story to hear that we're coming down in lead times, but some of the designers are calling out certain windows and doors that are up to 30 weeks still. And so that we will be ready for these windows before that. And so there will probably be a little bit of a delay now that we've changed tactics over here. But yeah, the objective is to really get the customer into the showroom, explain to them what we've discussed pre-construction wise. They may even change their mind on certain things. We may have spec'd out vinyl sliders or vinyl windows because that was what I thought the budget was going to dictate. But once you get them to the showroom, boy, oh boy, they start to see what the options are, and you get a real sense of what their budget really is when they start to get a look at those La Cantinas and those other types of.
And that actually happened to you recently, right? On a project you got going?
For sure, yeah. You saw beginning, pre-construction, it was a tight budget, so we did call out a lesser expensive slider.
I got the picture right here.
Yeah, for sure. So here's all weather, and this is a project in the Hollywood Hills. We did 2 units. This is a 6-panel, that's a 3-panel. The 3-panel is actually here in the showroom. It's pretty much the same one. And we had spec'd out a lesser version, and the wife kind of just kept hitting the husband and saying she liked this, and they have a beautiful view of the canyon. So this
facing
not
where the camera is.
Sorry, yeah. So for this particular one, yeah, this is something that they wanted to make sure they had the view of the pool for this job. I'm thinking of another job with the canyon. The pool for this job, they wanted to make sure the ease of indoor to outdoor transition, and this made the most sense. And when you feel these sliders slide, the weight to it and the smoothness really comes into play.
Yeah, that's really good. I'd like to point out that that's wisdom on your part, setting those expectations early with the client, because there are different manufacturers out there. Some of them are only a few weeks lead time. Some of them are much longer. And so for you to set that expectation with the client, like, hey guys, within 3 weeks of us signing this contract, I need to have this ordered because it's going to change on the schedule potentially, and it might even extend the contract time, or it might even extend how long I'm hoping that your project is going to take. So that's really smart to set those expectations early. And isn't it true in both our businesses and our marriages or our relationships that setting good expectations leads to good outcomes? And when you don't set those expectations properly, that's when things go poorly, right? Did you end up installing that door with you or your crew, or did Bill install that door?
Yeah, that was all in-house with our crew. The frame for the 6-door was humongous, and we had to create a workspace over the pool so we can have it sideways to install it upright. It was a lot of fun. Everything really came out nice. It all starts with the foundation and making sure you're level, plumb, and square. And so when that happens, the less shimming, the better, and the overall success of the project. So
was that new construction or is that remodel?
So the new construction was the ADU. That's a fancy Los Angeles, California for accessory dwelling unit. And so this was a remodel to the main home. And so that was ground up for the ADU. And they don't have a connecting door, but they have a sharing wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Any advice you've got, and I didn't prep you on this, so feel free if you don't have an answer for this, but any advice you've got as we talk about windows and doors when it comes to being in a WUI, what is it, Wildlands Urban Interface, WUI?
Yeah, tempered glass is a big one. If you're in a fire zone, you got to read your plans, and sometimes you're not going to get someone who's going to remind you of that, and you might be in a world of hurt if you purchased windows that weren't tempered and you're in a fire zone. So that's a big boo-boo, and so you want to avoid that at all costs. And just know that California has the most strict energy efficiency code. So you know, you want to consult your Title 24 engineer. You want to. I always ask the inspector things. I try to be as nice as possible.
That's really smart.
And I am very humble. I say things like, "Hey, we don't want to f this up," and you know, and they remind us about, "Hey, you're in a fire zone," you know, so we want to check the temper. All windows must be tempered, and so it's very, very important.
What about frames? Can you use vinyl frames in a fire zone?
Yeah. So there are some. I don't want to answer that truly because I'm not
sure either.
Yeah, I'm not totally positive, but I don't believe I've ever been prohibited from using vinyl. I don't recall that ever being an issue.
Do you know the answer to that, Carlos? I'm going to put you on the spot.
There's some cities that ask you not to use vinyl, but for the most part, there's no real code. It's just up to the local building department.
Gotcha. I would assume that aluminum, maybe even fiberglass, would tend to be more heat resistant than a vinyl frame. I see some people shaking their heads. And we've all seen the YouTube videos of houses post-fire and the vinyl frames have like melted. So I would suspect if that's an issue for you, would want to consider something else for the outside. Yeah,
everything is 1 hour fire rated. So whatever material that needs to occur to make that happen, and if vinyl works, and again, bounce things off the inspector. It's the smartest thing you could possibly do, and I highly recommend it. Just get on his good side. And
that's great advice.
Yeah. Just make sure you don't mess it up.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Did I miss anything from what we talked about ahead of time, or what you were thinking about?
No, absolutely not. I think we covered everything. It was great to be with you guys the last couple of days, and very excited to be here. So thank you.
Awesome. We're going to leave time for Q&A afterwards too. So if you've got questions for any one of these three folks specifically, or us generally, happy to answer those. Let's move on to Kobe. So Kobe Cohen, California Deck Builders, did I get that right?
That's right.
And Kobe, you're an interesting contractor because you started as a carpenter and worked as a carpenter for many years. So you're the rare builder who really, I'm not, I never did any framing or carpenter work before I became a builder, who really gets all the details. And you actually trained, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you actually trained overseas in a pretty stringent carpentry apprenticeship program,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
That's pretty cool. That's unique.
Yeah. The thing with decks is that it's kind of a combination. It's kind of tricky because it's if you want to be a good deck builders, it's a combination between a good finish carpenter and a good framer.
That's right.
So it's kind of tricky to find, even, it's kind of, for me, it's hard to find a labor. Yep. Because you're either a good framer and you will do like amazing frame, but the finish will looks
not great.
Yeah, or
there's no drywall on your decks to cover up the
and
framing.
if you take it to the other direction, and then, you have an amazing 45-degree and all the finishes are perfect and it's all shake underneath. So it's kind of combination of the two trades.
That's really interesting. And you have a pretty interesting model in that you have several in-house carpenters and you end up doing a lot of the labor yourselves.
Correct.
On all kinds of stuff. But you and I had an interesting conversation that I'd love to fill these guys on yesterday on how do you decide what you're going to do with your in-house crew? You have 8 total people on your crew, is that right?
Yeah, 12.
12, I'm sorry.
Right.
I undersized you. And you and I were talking about, like, how do I decide as a contractor, do I do my own footings? Do I bring a sub in for that? Do I do structural framing? I'd love to get your wisdom on that.
This is something that I spoke with Bill before, and he just told me that he liked to have one big job and then several small jobs, and he have like kind of a center place or a base that it will be easy to move from to. Yeah, that's one of those things, So
this is a video of one of Kobe's jobs. You can just play this in the background while you're talking. But this is an interesting outdoor project that has all kinds of different this is not just a deck project. You're doing all kinds of things besides
it's few
decks.
things here. It's a war. It's it's a still it's metal work and it's decking and it's a kind of unique decking because it's like with no support. It's all over the cliff kind of a system that we came with. It's all steel frame underneath and. As the video go on, so you will see over there. So I have like 2 outdoor kitchens. It's a beautiful property though.
And
Really
how'd you
nice.
decide what of that you were going to self-perform with your 12 people versus subbing out different phases?
Yeah, so we can do everything. We can do everything. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense to use like expensive carpenter to do digging.
Yeah, that's right. Makes sense.
Right. So it will be way beneficial if to hire somebody else to do that,
Yeah.
and have the guys doing what they train to do and what they like to do.
Yeah,
That's
that makes sense.
another thing, because when you don't like to do something, he's suffering, he's coming, he's never smiling. You want people to be happy.
That's right.
And they will be happy if they will do things that they like to do,
That's a great point. That's a really good point.
So sometimes, you just move it on, you stop somebody for other things and you use your guys, for what they're good with. Yeah.
Now, I noticed you've got your Trex Platinum shirt on, so obviously you've put some Trex in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what we need to know or what we need to think about when we're thinking about decks that could be in a fire zone or in a wild
Right.
lands urban interface. What should we know about that?
Yeah. So as we all know, we are in an area that many of those locations are in a high fire zone. In order to do a deck over there, you need to use a Class A material. Now, Trex doesn't really have that kind of thing, but there are a few others out there in the market, TimberTech, and if you go wood, Ipe. So Ipe wood is a rate as a Class A.
Okay, I didn't realize that. And what about TimberTech makes it a Class A material?
Yeah, because it's when it's mixed, when the board mixed with vinyl, it's turned to be a Class A. Of course, if it's passed all the lab tests.
Right. And it's not that you couldn't burn those materials or that Ipe wouldn't burn.
Oh yeah,
right?
it will. It will. But the thing is that you can take a piece of Ipe and you can take a torch in one hand and the Ipe and you try. You will be on it with, few minutes until it will catch on fire.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I'm talking about a torch. It's like a high temperature.
Yeah, like a plumber's torch you're
A
talking.
plumber torch. That's it. Yeah. And as soon as it catches a fire, it will be really hard to stop the fire. So
Yeah.
the energy is amazing. So, but it takes long time till fire. It's not like you can come with a lighter and start the fire. No, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
So that Class A rating is good for us to realize. It's not that those materials won't burn
Exactly.
or won't go away in a fire.
Right.
It's that they don't catch fire quickly. There's some amount of time that embers can fall on them before that material actually would catch fire.
Correct. And just to remind to everybody, even when you talk about a high fire zone, and the requirement is to use a decking board that is a Class A, the frame is still wood.
Right. That's right.
The frame is all wood. It's all pressure treated wood,
Yeah.
I hope so in most of the cases. So it's pressure treated wood. So if the fire comes from down below, let's say you are in the in the
Coming up
hills.
the hill.
So this is why sometimes we are required to do a wall in front with stucco
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
As a fire break.
as a fire break.
I didn't know about that. That's interesting.
And it's so we actually build a wall, a stud wall, a regular stud wall, but with stucco outside.
Huh. And that breaks that fire from coming up quickly
Correct.
underneath that deck space.
Correct.
That's interesting. I got a question for you. When I
Yeah.
walked into this showroom, if you look to your left, my right over here, I about dropped my jaw when I realized that BFS here has redwood in stock in like all these different sizes. I was talking to these guys who moved from Michigan a couple years ago, and as a non-California builder, I couldn't believe that redwood was in stock on the shelf on the rack at BFS.
Yeah.
4x4s that look like they're 20 foot long and 2x10s that are 20
Right.
foot long. It sounds like around here it's fairly common to see redwood fencing, deck structure. What's happening with redwood versus pressure treat in this area?
Okay, so redwood is not what it was used to be.
Okay.
Okay, I know this is kind of a legend that does not exist anymore. Everybody say, oh, redwood, redwood. But people forget that back in the day, the reason that the legend created was because most of the houses here are actually was built with redwood.
Oh,
But
really?
they forget,
Redwood framing.
yeah, so the redwood stud. So if you go to houses from the 30, it will be a redwood stud.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, but those trees was a very slow growth.
Yeah, it was
So
a
they was
300-year-old
200, 400 years old.
Right.
Now, the regulation in California, that you can't cut those things anymore.
Sure, that makes sense.
So they was very, very dense. So if you will take a same cube, let's say 4 by 4 by 4, you know, a cube
Yep.
of old redwood and a new redwood, and you hold them in two hands, it's just like that.
It's just so much denser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today, you know, probably like 20 years, they, you know, in Northern California, they will plant those trees, and after 20 years, they will cut them off. A few days later, they're going to be in Home Depot on the shelf or here or somewhere.
Right.
But they are very, very fluffy and airy, and they don't have the quality.
Yeah, so be cautious about where you use that, in
Right.
other words, right?
Right.
It's not
right.
gonna
It's
have
a
the
great
same
material.
legendary-
You know, it's a great material. It's good for fencing, for many, many things. But
Yeah.
it's not. You know, the legend is not there.
Yeah, that makes sense. You still need good detailing. You still need air
Absolutely.
gaps. You still need to make sure that
Absolutely.
it can dry,
Right.
all that stuff.
Yep.
Talk to me about ePay. It sounds like you guys have done a lot of ePay over the years. What
Right.
is it about ePay that makes it more resistant for a deck material? And also, I'm curious if you've got any tips for us on how to know whether it's ePay or not on your
Okay.
job site, because there's a lot of woods that look like it.
Right. This is absolutely right. 100% right. So there are a lot of species out there that looks like ipe, and some people will say that it's ipe, and some other even will sell you that as ipe with the price of ipe, and it's not ipe, and it's just a hardwood. Ipe is a big family, and many of those trees coming, you know, from South America, Brazil. So I found a way, you know. I call it, you know, the tree test.
All right,
you know,
what are those three tests? I want to hear.
To test to know if you're dealing with the real thing, right? Because it looks the same, especially when it's oil and it's on the deck. It looks beautiful. So, but it's not ipe.
Yep.
So the first thing, and you need a little bit of experience with the first test, is just to know by the look, the grain, the color, the variation, the look of it,
Yep.
if it's ipe or this is a first. But you do need some experience, you
Yeah.
know, to
Yeah.
know. The second one is just is way simpler. So you just cut the board, and you look right into the cut, and you want to see like green dots, and you want to see also green dust. Not a brown, not dark brown. You want to see a lot of green.
I see a few people shaking their heads. They've seen that before. It's
Yeah, I mean,
interesting, isn't it? It's a brown board.
It's a
eBay,
brown board with
but when
green
you cut it, there's
dust.
this greenish tint.
Yeah.
It's different.
Now, the third test is like the most accurate. It's funny, I guess. So you're taking
The
this
most
dust,
scientific, or at least scientific.
You're taking the dust and you just rub it against your hand. So if you start to itch right away, you're dealing with the real thing.
Love it. This is a wise builder who's been around eBay a
Yeah,
lot.
that's it.
I love it.
That's it.
That's
It's
awesome,
simple.
Kirby.
And
That cracks me up.
Don't get it down your pants, right?
Yeah, don't.
that's right.
Do
yeah,
not
yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
That is not recommended.
Yeah, some people are really sensitive to it, and it will, you know, it will create some kind of allergy. But
I've got one of my carpenters who's an amazing carpenter back in Texas, who he will not be on the job if there's an ePay,
Right.
if there's ePay cutting
Right.
going on. He's absolutely allergic to it and breaks out in hives.
And this is exactly why ipe is such a good wood for outdoor.
Yeah, it's super dense and super durable and
Right.
lasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Let's talk about some deck durability tips. We went to a small project for you, a couple 100-square-foot deck project the other day. Here's a photo of it. I think that might be me down on the backside there. Matthew took these pics. And there's a couple things going on here that when I first arrived, I was like, what is going on? Like, why is this painted? was my first question. What's going on with this framing being painted?
Okay, so in that particular case, it's elevated about 11 and a half foot above the ground. And, it's supposed to be kind of a patio, a sitting area down there. And you don't want to raise your head, and just see a pressure treated wood. And so we came with this thing. So we painted, and the whole thing going to be painted. All this wall going to be painted later on with the same color. So
that's so cool. I've never seen that before. It makes total sense.
Yeah, why
right?
not?
If there's any view of the deck underneath, why not paint it so it looks better?
Yeah, so there are a lot of products out there to cover the whole deck from the bottom, but in that case it's
yeah, it looks
this
pretty
is what
good
we
from the
choose.
underside.
Yeah.
And there's nothing special there per se. It's just brought the painter in and had him spend a couple hours painting those joists.
Yeah,
and they
prime
look
it
pretty
one
good.
day and come the other day, the next day, and just spray it with paint, and that's it.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have a good wide shot of this, but what you're looking at here, guys, is on the perimeter of the deck. He's got some 4x4 posts, and these were pressure treated posts with some kind of a, I don't know if that's a Simpson post base or what. What's going on here? What is that?
Okay, so the whole deck over here, that's a good example of kind of a hybrid deck. It's like some of it is on a concrete, some of it have like a waterproof system. The other, probably 70% of it is like a regular, it's open, so there are no problem. And then the railing was attached to the frame. In that particular place, you have a wood, but underneath the wood, you have some sort of a cement. Now, what we are planning to do on this particular job is to build like kind of a big pillars, like 16 by 16 pillars. This wood is just, to make sure that this pillar is not going anywhere.
Yep.
So everything going to be with the marine plywood and everything going to be painted. But in order to hold that post really stable to this scenario, so we did like a custom, so we order a custom
post base.
Post base.
So that's not like a Simpson product that you picked up off the shelf here.
And you can tell, it's all 1/4 inch thick, it's like.
It was beefy. I was impressed. I liked it.
Yeah, as you see, it's all epoxy. It's like it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that was cool. That was very cool. I was impressed by that. I like that. The other thing that I saw on your job that's becoming more common, but not everybody knows about that, is this. What's going on with this photo?
Okay, so this is basically what it is. It's like a waterproof membrane. It's a sticker. It's a flashing. It's just, and just we install it on top of the beams. And let's say that this particular deck or any kind of deck without that, especially if you have trees around, and you have debris and all that, I will guesstimate 15, 16, 18 years it will last before it will fail. With this sticker, which is a very small investment, it's like, it's nothing. You actually double. You double it.
I mean, that's a great tip from a wise old deck builder. Double your framing life by making a waterproof layer between your decking and your framing. Because how long is the Trex or the TimberTech going to last, right? Or the E-Pay for that matter.
You're getting 30 years warranty. So
so why not put a framing underneath it
that will last, 31 years.
Yeah, it's really smart.
Yeah, now, in many cases, sometimes you come to a customer and customers say, listen, I have a great deck, it's perfect, I just want to replace the top. And, you go underneath and it looks great, right? It looks good. And from my experience, I keep telling him, say, listen, we are not going to price it this way. Let's do something else. Let's break it down.
Yeah.
Let's take the boards and then we will stand here, both of us, the customer and I.
Take a look at it.
Take a look at that. And you will tell me if you want to install anything new on it.
That's really smart.
In 95% from the cases, when you rip it, everything looks great. The top is gone.
Yeah, so what happens is that screw or nail that penetrates onto the pressure treated causes that split in the wood. Water sits in there, and in between the boards, where there's a little gap, the leaves sit in there. It rots that top section out, and that's really wise to have them look at it, so you don't just look like the bad contractor who's like, oh, you got to replace this. right?
Yeah.
They get to see with their own eyes and go, oh
and,
yeah.
and
I
my
see what you mean.
rule time, I mean, it's like if 60% is okay, 40, so it's time to the whole thing to go.
Yeah, for sure.
If it's one piece, 2 pieces, but if it's 40%, it's just need to go. I mean, we have a saying that say you don't build, a new cupboard with rusty nails. So this is one of those samples.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Did I miss anything from that job, Kobe? I think that was all my photos.
I don't think so. We're
Good
good.
stuff, man. Let's go over to Bill. Bill Vano, your company is Precision Window and Door Installation, right?
Precision door and window installation.
Based here in LA,
Yep.
Thousand Oaks area.
Yes, I am.
And Bill and I have spent a little bit of time the last couple days talking about pivot doors. I'm just curious from the audience, how many of you have installed a pivot door before on some of your projects? A couple of you have. How many of you would be a little anxious about a pivot door install? All right, I'm the only one who's actually brave enough to raise my hand. I see how you
I
are.
am too.
I thought you'd be all like, yes, I'm so anxious. All right, so Bill, give us a little advice on pivot doors, and I think you have some show and tell that you brought for us too, didn't you?
Yeah, we brought some floor-mounted pivot hinges and top mount and some other latches and different things. So with the pivot door, it's just about how your planning is really important. Your planning, your frame has to be exactly right, and everything has to be really accurate to within a 1/16 of an inch on your alignment. Your top pivot has to be perfectly aligned over your bottom pivot.
If you don't mind, I'm going to pull this show and tell out. And by the way, Bill and I shot a separate build show specifically on this. So stay tuned for that where you can kind of see the nerdy details. But Bill installed this actual piece of hardware. This is a Dorma...
That is a Dorma 660
660
floor hinge.
And so this hinge is actually the same exact hinge as you're going to see in that showroom right down there. That's the entrance door. That's the big pivot. And I got to say, this was a little less intimidating once I heard how you installed it. So talk to me about how this gets installed into, let's say, a concrete slab.
Yeah, so established concrete, you locate the hinge on the floor, then you mark where the screws are that you see in the bottom. Those are also elevators too, so you could raise it a little bit with those.
Yep.
And then you mark where the barrel is, and then you just carefully drill and cut your concrete, and then you epoxy that and drop it right in.
So with this, Bill, you're actually drilling 5 holes, right?
Yes, we are.
Into the concrete, rather than saw cutting, let's say, and having to worry about a saw cut or a kerf cut that now you're going to see after this gets installed. It's really hard to plunge cut concrete without overcutting by accident. So instead, he's drilling. And then does this have any adjustment after you've done those holes?
That particular one has a little bit of height adjustment. You can only raise the height, but you can't move it left or right.
Okay, gotcha. So once this is epoxied in place, you got to make sure this is really in alignment of where you want that. And this bottom pin needs to be perfectly plumb, a perfect plumb line down from the top pivot location, right?
Correct. Yeah, you really need to dry fire everything really well before you epoxy it all in. Make sure everything's in the right location because there is no moving it afterwards.
Yeah. And this interior location here at the showroom would be like an interior door, but you could do this for an exterior door as well, right?
Yeah, you can. You can bury that with a threshold, continual threshold from jam to jam, and you could use it in an exterior application as well. Yeah, here it's just interior, so there's no threshold.
Yeah.
Just we didn't want anybody to trip on it here, so we excluded the threshold on it.
And what was the showroom that I visited today where you did the exterior door? Where was that?
Oh, that is in LA Glendale, I believe.
Is that Glendale?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's their Glendale store, and we used a little different hinge. We used a Jackson 933, and it's a hinge similar to that. It's a little bigger, but it has a self-closing feature on it as well.
Gotcha.
And
that's
that
in the
one's
CR Lawrence catalog, by the way, Jackson 933.
Yeah, so that one's a little different. That one you have to make a full box cutout for it, and you have to put a concrete case in first, then the hinge fits inside that.
So that one's a little harder in some
It
respects
is,
than this
yes,
guy.
it's harder than that.
And the other thing I would mention too on pivot doors, if you're going to use them on an exterior, remember that pivot door's got that action where you've got one section of the door coming in and one going out. So you're really not typically going to get a bulb type seal that you might on a swing door. And so you're relying, like on that door that I saw over there, on a double brush seal, which are great. But if you had water coming up against that door with a double brush seal, like let's say a real modern, no overhang type house, I'd not recommend that as your exterior door because you're going to get that water that's going to get through there. On the other hand, if you check out the showroom afterwards, I'd highly recommend you check it out. I really like these showrooms because they don't put any trim on the inside or the outside. You can see what the door install looks like, how we screw it through the jamb, how we shim it, even what the door thresholds look like, because you want to make sure that, for instance, your weeps are not buried when you install those doors. If those weeps get buried, very often that water is backing up into the house. And that's an easy and fairly common mistake that's made on doors, exterior doors, is to bury those weeps. So check out that showroom. And the other thing I want to mention too is you're going to see some of those doors have low, what's the word I'm looking for, Bill? What do they call that when it's a low barrier to entry? A ADA sill? Yes. Am I saying that right? And then others have a bigger back leg. And typically a bigger back leg means that that sill is going to be more rated for water and wind. It's going to have a higher design pressure, or DP rating. And when you talk to your BFS reps about ordering doors, Carlos and I, when we were looking at the showroom yesterday, I was saying, hey, can you check out this La Cantina folder? What's the DP rating on this? It looks to be pretty stout. And as a matter of fact, that folder from La Cantina has a DP 45 rated sill, which means that if I'm in a coastal application, if I'm on the top of a hill with a lot of wind, this is a door that's really going to hold out the wind and water when you've got a DP 45 rated door. And typically that means it's not going to be this perfectly flush interior to outside. You're going to have some amount of sill showing. And like we talked about earlier with Mark, got to set those expectations with your clients, and having them come to the showroom and see that, talk about that, that's really good. And the last point, I'm sorry, Bill, I'll come back to you in a second, but this is a passion project for me, is be really cautious about what your inside and your outside flooring is. Because if you've got a low threshold sill, if you've got a pivot door, you know that's a door that's got brush seals. I'm going to get some amount of water through that door if the wind is blowing, if the water's hitting the door. Well, I don't want hardwoods on the other side of that door, right? Because hardwood floors are going to get wet every time it gets wind up against and water up against that door. So that's the perfect time to tell the client, hey, let's put a 1-foot tile border on the outside of the door. Get your designer involved to think about how to make that look good. Do a stone threshold on the back side of that door, and then have your hardwoods butt up to that, so that if any water gets on there, no big deal. It's inorganics. You can just mop it up, or even if it's sat there, it's not going to hurt the stone or the tile, and your hardwoods are going to be safely, a foot or so behind that. No problem at all. Any other comments on wind or water or install for those pivot doors, Bill?
No, but you brought up a good point. It is recommended to have good overhangs for doors like this, because I tell the people it's like having your coffee table outside if it's going to be exposed. So that particular door, that's a $9,000 slab right there, white oak. So you don't want it to get wet. It's not going to last that long.
Yeah.
So here there's about 25 feet of overhang, but you should have at least 6 or 8 feet of overhang.
That's a great point. 6 or 8 feet overhang. I like that. Let's get off pivots for a second, because I'd like to get a little advice on your window and door installs, because I know your company is installing for all kinds of different contractors, and this is not one of any of our jobs, but you guys did the window install here, and I thought this was such a great example of a really smart installer who says, okay, I don't really know what's going to happen with the builder's weatherization. Is this house going to have house wrap on it? I don't know. But I'm going to really take the steps to make sure this thing doesn't leak. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, what we did here is we started with a liquid membrane. It's the pinkish red color.
Mm-hmm.
Is a liquid membrane, so it allows the bitumen to stick better, and it's also a preliminary waterproofing. So now the builder could continue with the liquid membrane, and because we lapped it out a little bit, so he can do the whole house with that. In coastal, a lot of people are starting to do that now.
Oh,
so I wanted to make sure he had the future to do that if he wanted to.
Really smart. And I think you mentioned yesterday that you're actually doing some water testing on some of these as well. Tell me about that.
I do. So this house has about 45 or 50 openings. We have some that are, they're going to be recessed, and they're going to have baccarat and caulking. So I was a little bit concerned how thorough the waterproofing was. So what I did was I set up a water test for 45 minutes or an hour. And I went around with a temperature gauge on the inside to find any leaks.
How about that?
Yeah, so then what I do is I test a few openings, and then I modify my system a little bit. Like I did find a couple of issues, so I went back and was able to work on them before the stucco and everything goes on.
That's really smart.
Yeah, I didn't want to be out there in the rain next year and the people are saying the water's coming in and tear the stucco off and do all that. So I just head it off at the pass and I just water test before.
That's a wise builder that has a little bit of gray hair, right? That shows that
Thanks.
you've been around the block. That's a compliment. That wise hair means wisdom, or that gray hair means wisdom. I'm getting some of that myself as I'm about to turn 50.
Can you shoot me one of those hats really quick, please?
Yeah, I got one for you. The other thing that I want to point out on that build that you said that you glossed over it quickly, but you came back and after that water test said, I might modify my install. We've all seen there's 100 different ways to install windows, flash them, waterproof them. But Bill took the time to go, okay, this method that I did here, which looks bomber, including backer rod and back caulking, he tested it with some water to really see, hey, I think this is going to work great. I want to verify that, test but verify, trust but verify. And then he modified a little bit of his install method. Is there anything else you want to mention on that?
No, that was mostly, the windows are pretty easy to waterproof. They're not as much of an issue because they have a fin on them, an applied fin.
Yep.
I was more concerned about my doors because they were block frame.
Okay.
And there are more chances for leakage.
Yep.
So I don't know if you have a picture of the doors there, but if you show the...
I think I do. I think that might be my last pick. Yeah, that's my last one.
Okay. Yeah, the doors are a little more of an issue than the windows.
Yeah. You did mention something else though that I do want to say is that if you look at the window and door showroom, again, I like that there's no exterior trim on there because you can see, hey, is this a flange or a flangeless door? This is a flange or a flangeless window. And you'll see some manufacturers have a vinyl flange that's a fold-in flange. And I don't want to call it a manufacturer necessarily on YouTube, but when you fold those in, it means they don't get a lot of damage when you move them around the job site. They can also sometimes be pushed through a hole in a retrofit, no problem. But it does mean when you get to the corner on those, you've got that corner that looks like this, and you got this big open corner that there's sometimes a corner pad, a little kind of inexpensive foam pad that goes on that corner. Well, you got to be really cautious about those. You need to really think about that because you've got that exposed open corner. In the field, it's pretty easy to tape and seal, but when you get to the corners, you got to spend a little extra time. And I should go back to that photo of yours, Bill, but I suspect you lapped your flashing membrane onto the jamb of the window to help with that, and maybe even use some additional caulking or sealant in those corners.
Right, yeah, it's enveloped in where there's flashing under and over the fin.
Yeah. So that's something that's also nice about a showroom like this is you can take a look at how is the manufacturer shipping those windows to the job site and what precautions do I need to take in terms of actually installing those so they're going to withstand both water and wind. Bill, any other comments on that before we move on?
No, I think that covers it.
That's really good stuff, guys. We're running short on time. Why don't we switch to Q&A? I appreciate you guys sitting through our presentation. What can we answer for y'all from our wise builder crew here in their many years? Let's not say many years.
Back to the gray hair again,
Yeah,
right?
back to just many years of construction experience. What can we answer for y'all? Don't be shy. Yeah.
We're coming into some interesting times with interest rates and housing. Demand for housing is still high. But what are you guys doing to prepare yourself for the next potential downturn?
That's a great question. Let me repeat it just for the microphone. Yeah. So the question is, what have you guys done in your businesses for potential change in the economy with interest rates rising, that sort of thing? Mark, would you be willing to answer that?
I mean, it's scary, right? There's no silver bullet. My philosophy has always been the harder you work, the luckier you get. That seems to be working.
That's great
currently
advice in any market.
Yeah, so it's currently working for me, and that means everything. It means, going out there and introducing yourself to as many people as possible, doing great work. What else can you do? you know, it's either that or my golf game is going to get a little bit better, you know. So,
golf's
but
boring.
yeah, it's all, you know, as a owner of a business, it's extremely important to me to keep food on the plate of my employees, and so, you know, it keeps me up at night, and so, you know, I don't have a good answer other than just keep putting yourself out there, keep doing, you know, we're lucky, this marketplace, it seems to be not as affected as much on the west side where we currently are and where a lot of my jobs are. It just seems, you know, to not take as big of a hit. So we're
Kobe,
lucky.
how about you? I'm curious to hear
Yeah.
how you'd answer that.
Yeah, so from what I see around me, I will start with that. So I see that a lot of people, many people, you know, what they're doing, they try to reduce the cost, they reduce the overhead, kind of to be prepared for the future that nobody know what's going to happen, but they try to, it's always good to save money, right? So, but this is the biggest mistake, if you ask me, the biggest mistake. Because what they try to do, they try to remove the expensive manpower that they have and try to bring some less expensive manpower. And they try to wrap things quick in order to reduce, you know, the cost, to leave more money on the table. This is the biggest mistake ever. This is exactly how you're killing your business. What I'm saying, if you were spending X amount of money before, when everything was great, you know, when sun was out there, now it's cloudy, now you need to spend X amount of money plus. Get the best people. Don't cut corner. If it was important, you know, to bring, you know, just to do a great job, you know, go over every little detail so everybody will be happy, now do it twice.
That's good. That's right. Keep your reputation.
That's the only way, you know, to survive those times.
That's good stuff, Kobe.
Yeah.
Bill, how about you, brother?
For me,
What would
I'm
you
not
say?
going to worry. I've only got 2 years left, so. Rick Smith, where are you? I'm retiring with you next year.
From what I understand, you've got a pretty talented son in the business.
Yeah, my son's taking over,
So
and you know,
he's got a few years ahead of him, I suspect, if he's in
Yeah.
his 20s.
yeah, you know, we've been through 3 or 4, you know, down swings, and I think around here it always goes to say the good guys keep working. So
Yeah.
I think we just try to do the best job we can, and
Yep.
you know, some guys move into the areas after earthquakes and different things, and but the core stays around, you know. So
Yeah.
you just got to try to work on having a good reputation. You do what you say what you do, and then I just don't worry about anything else, you know.
Yeah. If I could summarize the three of you, what y'all said. Mark, I like what you said about focus on marketing. You got to hustle. You got to always be building your business. You know, we've had a little bit of a break in marketing and hustle in some respects because our phones were ringing pretty busy the last couple of years. That's great advice. Kobe's advice is pretty similar to yours, Bill, which is do your absolute best work. Double down on doing great work because that reputation is going to last. And I'd piggyback on that to say that good contractors, good craftsmen in any trade, they're always going to be in a demand. And we're still massively in a deficit in our building world in terms of skilled people. So if you're here, my guess is you're like-minded to us. You probably are in a business that is not the low budget, cheapest, you know, your name probably isn't Economy Builders. You're doing great work already. Keep that up. Double down on doing good work. But don't be afraid to toot your own horn a little bit. You know, I'm the master of tooting my own horn. I've been doing it for years, and that's really helped me because I've got this big marketing engine, YouTube videos, and I'm big on Instagram. I'm doing that, and I started doing that to simply promote my construction business, and here it's turned into a whole nother business. But you always got to be hustling. You always got to be promoting yourself. The last piece of advice that I would give you from personal experience from the last downturn, I went pretty heavy on speculative building in 05, 06, 07, and I paid for it dearly. If you've ever heard my story, when the last recession hit, I'm choking up thinking about it even. I had a very expensive house in an up-and-coming neighborhood that I could not sell, and I really thought I was going to go Chapter 11, and I had young babies in the house. It was high prayer time in my life that every Thursday I was praying to make payroll on Friday. It was very, very stressful for me. I think I got most of my gray hair during that time. And so I would highly recommend that you reduce the amount of speculative building you do and increase the amount of client building you do. Because all of my clients that I build with today, either they're cash clients, and I've got a lot of those, which is wonderful, or we have a bank loan in place. And I have a deposit from them, and I make sure my deposits are at least covering 1 month's draw worth of construction. So I'm never funding projects out of my own pocketbook, which I have done that in the past with smaller deposits, and that does not work, trust me. If you get into trouble and you've got $50,000 worth of your own money out there at a client's house, and they stop paying or something happens to them financially, things go badly for you. So you want to make sure you've got enough deposit to cover yourself. I also open up a separate bank account for every job, so their money is in a separate account. It's not commingled with my office expenses or other things. It's only their job, so that they can look at it at any time. They can see where their money's going. It keeps me as the trusted financial ally. We're on the same page. We're always working for our clients' interests. But combined not doing speculative projects and only doing client projects, I think it's set my company up well for if we do have a downturn. So I think between the advice you guys gave and don't build speculatively or reduce the amount of money you have speculatively, that's all we can do, other than don't worry about tomorrow, just make today happen, because that's all we're given is today. So make sure you do your absolute best job today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Great question. Any other questions, guys? Anything we can answer? Don't be shy. Yeah.
So Kobe, I love your work.
Oh,
Seen
thank
it.
you.
It's really nice stuff. I was a big fan of ePay myself, and but then I got into bamboo, and actually picked some up here. And what do you think about two questions? Bamboo in general compared to ePay as a product, and then what do you think about BFS have like the camo system? So there's some really great innovation in terms of, I'm a little bit of a gadget freak, so they have just amazing ways to put decks together, which just simplifies the process. So how has that affected your business?
I will start from there.
Let me actually repeat that real quick just to make sure we got it for YouTube.
Sure.
So the question is, what do you think about bamboo? Have you used it before, and compare that to ePay? And then what are some of your favorite fastening systems, including, let's say, camo, which is a pretty cool hidden fastener system?
All right, yeah. So as far as bamboo going, I'm not a big fan, to be honest. I'm not a big fan. Now, the other thing is that they are not, we all here, we don't have enough experience with that, how it's going to behave, in the next 15 years. So this is pretty much, this is a new product. So it might be okay, it might be not. Okay? So this is one thing. So I'm not a big fan, It's like the whole bamboo. But this is my personal. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying nothing. I'm not a big fan. That's it.
It doesn't itch when you put it on his?
No, it's not. It's not. Not at all. As far as the camo is great for, I'm using camo for a softwood, 1.5 minimum. With ePay, it doesn't work for me. For ePay, I'm not even use the hidden fastener. The only fastener that I'm used for ePay, just because, he's a wild animal. You have to force it to be, so it just face drilling. And if you want to be really fancy, just plug it. And we're doing that a lot. We plug them, it's not a big deal. And it looks perfectly nice.
I got a story for you on that front, Kobe. One of my first ePay deck projects years ago, and I don't use a ton of ePay anymore, but I did for a while. I put square head trim, like #1 square drive stainless screws in. Yeah. Bill's already cringing. He knows the end of the story.
Just cut like butter.
And as we were installing them, a lot of the fasteners stripped. Right. Well, guess what? I had a problem with the waterproofing underneath the waterproof deck, and like 6 months later, I had to come pull it. Yeah. And you cannot imagine the pain that was involved with getting that deck up, because I used square drive #1, and I used like trim head screws #1. It was brutal. It took us like 4 days to remove the deck boards because we were trying to put the down again after we fixed the waterproofing issue.
Right.
So since then, I've been a big fan of I like face screws on decks, especially if you got a good carpentry crew that can,
Right.
you know, string a line, make those screw heads look good. I kind of like showing the craftsmanship of well-aligned, good-looking screws. I mean, camo's cool. I just did a camo recently on my in-laws deck, but those stainless screws, all in alignment, man, that looks really good. And go with the bigger head too.
Right.
You know, you want that number 8, number 10 head
Right.
on there, because then you can actually pull a deck board off and do something if you need to.
And actually, sometime instead of everybody try to hide the fasteners. And I say, you know what, you don't have to always hide them. Sometimes you want to show them.
Yep.
To show them, so you use like a number 10, you use a big head, but you need to be, kind of, to do it like a pristine work with that.
Yeah, that's
so you
right.
have to run nice lines, and you can create a design of it.
Yeah.
You can do like 2 on one board, and nothing here, the second one. So it's become to be kind of interesting. So it's a little bit of a detail. So it's really,
like
really
that.
nice. As
Shows
far
off
as
your
the camo,
craftsmanship.
just for your answer, the thickness of the Ipe, if you're not going with 5/4 and you're going with a regular board, it's basically 5/8. Now the camo will drill it, in almost 45 degree, almost in the middle of it. So what left? So when you think about the thickness, and nothing really left there. So you're doing 1,000,000 of them, so the boards just stay there. But when things start to shift and twist, and it kind of, it's become to be ugly. I'm not talking about even if you want to remove a board, you will never be able to remove it. Because the screw head is just a tiny, it will strip, it's not going to, So this is why I'm using that in 1.5 on redwood decks, on cedar decks, those decks. That's fine, because you are in the center, you still have enough, meat, to go through.
Good tip. By the way, I met the rep for, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Melanie, who's repping for the, thank you, Dasso Bamboo. And what was cool about it is they have a rain screen system for a vertical application with kind of a shiplap looking board, but it has a built-in 45-degree slope, so that any rainwater that's falling down the face would naturally want to go to the outside. That was a pretty cool system. And I think several of the vendors that are here today are going to be set up on the tables over there. So go talk to those guys. And if you're watching this video and you haven't been to this particular store, quick plug for BFS. I've been a customer since 2001 is when I started using BFS. At the time it was called BMC. You probably know this already, but BMC and BFS merged, I don't know, 2 years ago now or so. So these were 2 really big companies merged. They're like 550, 600 locations, something like that around the country. I've been a customer for 2 decades now. And this type of store is why I'm a customer. When you walk in the store, there's a Tajima tool display, which you can't find those anywhere. And they're awesome. It's like a $40 caulk gun that you think, like, why would you spend 40 bucks? And then you use one, you're like, these are awesome. There's titanium hammers on the shelf. If you need a Simpson specialty hardware, it's in the back. If you need a 20-foot long redwood 2x10, it's right here. If you ran out of Trex lighting because you ordered too short, you can pick one on the shelf. This is a contractor store that's meant for builders and not the Home Crapo store down the street. This is who you should be buying from if you're a builder, remodeler, contractor for a living. These stores are set up for us. They're made for us. So thank you for hosting us, BFS. And BFS has been a big supporter of the Build Show and the work we do. I'm sure you guys know every video we publish, everything's free on our website, buildshownetwork.com. All our videos are free. And so we rely on some manufacturers, BFS, to support our work. And we're trying to get out here and help you guys with some wisdom so that you don't make some of the mistakes that the gray-haired folks in the front here have. Not that you have, but I have. So I really appreciate you guys coming. The 4 of us are going to hang out for a little bit. I think that, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a taco truck here. I know for sure there was at least 1 or 2 bottles of wine over here, maybe 3. And the 4 of us would love to answer your questions. If you were too shy to ask them to the big group, we'd love to answer them. So with that being said, let's get a big round for these guys who came out. And I need to close out the video, don't I? I need to close out the video, don't I? Yes. All right. A-cam's right here. Guys, thank you for joining us today. Build Show live-ish, in-person Build Show here in Los Angeles. It was really, really fun to get to visit some builders, see some really cool job sites. And of course, California is incredible. This is quite a place to be. I really enjoyed my visit the last couple days. But if you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. You know we've got new content every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on TikTok or Instagram. Otherwise, I'll see you next time on the Build Show. You guys know the intro.